Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Austin. I'm the Director of the Travel and Service Programs here at Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA. I've been working with the camp since 2007, started as a trip leader back then and led a few programs with TSP, one to Sweden, Russia, and also REACH back when it was a TSP program. And now I work full-time in the office.
And my name is Becky McCluskey, and I work as the Assistant Director for TSP. And I first started working with Beckett Chimney Corners in 2012 when I co-led ISTEP China. And shortly after that, I started working in the office full-time with Alyssa.
So this presentation is all about the Travel and Service Programs, which is a program option for campers that are finishing the 9th or 10th grade. And we're really just going to give you an overview of what the programs are all about, also talk about the application and enrollment process. So to start, I feel like it's very helpful to get a better understanding of as a whole how TSP fits into the leadership progression here at camp. So we've made this chart right here that you can see that just kind of breaks it down in terms of grade level, what options are available for campers. And you'll see that as they get older, there's a lot more options available. So starting in grades 2nd through 9th, you have the option to be a camper. And then as a 9th grader, you either have the choice to return to camp for another camper year, or you can apply to the travel and service programs, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And TSP is really a first-year leadership program, so it's really the starting point before you'll get into programs that will further help you develop skills to go on to become a counselor or just do other leadership activities in your life. So after the travel and service programs, you have the option as a 10th grader finishing the 10th grade to apply to the LIT program. And within that is included the REACH program, which goes out to South Dakota, or the AIDS program, which is an on-camp program. And from there, those participants can then apply for staff the following year as an 11th grader. And this year we also do have a new program, which is partnership with the National Outdoor Leadership School. So that's NOLS, and that is an option that you can do finishing the 10th grade as well. And it's really a 3-week backpacking course up in Alaska. But as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing in on TSP today.
Great, so like Alyssa just said, we'll be focusing on the 3 main program options that are available to campers who have finished the 9th and 10th grades. So the first program within TSP is called TLS, or Teen Leadership and Service. And on this program, the group does bicycle touring through parts of Vermont and upstate New York. And along the way, the group stops in some of the many small towns to do different service projects. The second program we offer is called YAS, Yellowstone Adventure and Service. And on this program, the group flies out west to Montana and Wyoming and does service work in some of the national forests and national parks out there. And the third program option we'll be talking about is ISEP, or International Camper Exchange Program. And on these programs, we partner with YMCAs in 9 different countries overseas. And it's through those partnerships that we're able to run different types of activities and service projects and our homestays through partnering with YMCAs abroad. So we have 3 main program goals on all of our trips. Those are cultural and environmental learning, leadership development, and service learning. And so we're going to just touch on each of those goals right now. On all of the programs, the groups do some tourist activities, but we really try as much as possible to make these trips unique opportunities to really connect with local people and local communities. And so that takes a few different forms depending on which program you're on. On our TLS and YAS programs, like I said before, we're partnering a lot with day camps, park rangers, and other volunteers. And through those partnerships, participants get to learn a lot about the local environment and also just about what people in those communities are doing to help protect their environment. On our ISEP partnerships, like I said, we partner with YMCAs. And so YMCAs abroad are really interesting community centers. They're a little bit different from the YMCAs we have here in the States, where they might still have like a workout room and swimming pools, but they'll also sometimes have elementary schools or community cafes, just places where everyone in the surrounding community can really come together. And so through our partnerships, we're able to get involved with different cultural activities that the YMCAs are already offering, like cooking classes or dance classes. And we're also able to use those partnerships just to get involved with different types of service projects and opportunities that the YMCA is already promoting in their communities.
As we've mentioned so far, TSP is a first-year leadership program, and really what that means is that one of our main goals is to help participants transition from being a camper into more of that staff role, and really just develop leadership skills that they can use whether they come back to camp or just throughout their life. And we have a curriculum that we use across all of our programs called Behavior Interaction Styles that participants will get introduced to once they're here for orientation. And one of the main focuses of it is really to help participants understand that there's many different ways to be a leader, and really help to start narrow in on what their own personal strengths and weaknesses are and what their personal leadership style is. So on program, some of the things that you could expect to do would be to be the leader of the day for a day. So usually participants will get a couple times throughout the program to take on this role where they're being mentored by their trip leaders, but have a lot more say in decision making for the day. So they might be helping to wake the group up, they might be leading a group grocery shopping trip, or talking to a service partner. So there's a lot of different activities included in that. They'll also be meeting 3 times formally with their trip leaders throughout the program to really sit down and talk about their strengths and weaknesses in terms of leadership, how the program's going, and to set goals to try to accomplish throughout their trip. And we record all of that into something we call the Camper Leadership Record, which is really just an active document to help track progress throughout the program.
On all of our programs, whenever our groups complete different service projects, we try as much as possible to meet the needs of the local communities and the organizations that we're partnering with. And so with the service work, it's really less about trying to help people in need and more about taking the time to educate ourselves about what people in the communities care about and the projects and initiatives that they have already started to help improve their communities. And then from there, as we learn more about those initiatives, it's about the group doing what we can to just kind of lend a hand and help out with those projects. And so when we talk about service work on the programs, we typically split it into 2 different categories. There's physical service and social service. And so with physical service projects, that's really, if you picture a construction cabin, really anything where you're getting hands-on experience. So it could be helping to build structures, it could be painting fences or painting classrooms, it could be mixing cement like you see in this picture, anything that involves usually using your hands and getting a little bit dirty. In terms of social service, that's any type of work with other people. And so it could be playing games with really young children. It could be running team building activities and icebreakers with other teens. Or it could be putting on like a trivia game or some other activity with elderly people at a nursing home facility. And so later on in the presentation, as we talk more about each of the programs, we'll try to be more specific about the types of service that we have on the program.
So all of the TSP programs are co-ed, and so we have both Beckett and Chimney Corners campers traveling together, and about 95 to 99% of our campers come from within the organization, so they've grown up at camp. And per group, we have about between probably 8 and 15 participants on a program with 2 leaders who come from our organization as well. And the programs, they really do travel as a group throughout the experience, and that's something that we really emphasize on these programs. So similar to what you've experienced at camp with your cabin groups, we try to have a very similar feel on the programs. So while you may be interacting with other team groups and service partners, you might have homestays, you will be interacting with a lot of people throughout your program, but it all really comes back to that group experience. And we have definitely found that campers will stay in touch with each other for many years to come because it's such a bonding experience. Great, so now we're going to move into a bit more about the application process and really what we look for in applicants. So applying for TSP, this is really the first year at camp that you're being asked to apply for a program rather than just enroll. And what that means is that we don't accept 100% of the campers that apply for these programs. And a big reason for that is because just the types of things that campers are doing on these programs, in the sense that they're traveling to foreign countries potentially or within the US, it just definitely requires a higher level of maturity than is expected at camp. And so some of the things that we look for in terms of criteria is, one, just that you've demonstrated throughout your time at camp that you're able to get along with others, and also be able to follow instructions from your trip leaders. We also, of course, want you to be interested in some of the core parts of our program, which would be leadership development, service learning, and cultural or environmental exploration. As I mentioned, the majority of our campers do come from within the organization, so that's definitely something that boosts your application. Good health and enthusiasm, that's something that a lot of times parents have questions about. We're able to accommodate a lot of different health concerns, such as dietary concerns and things like that. We just need to know about it ahead of time. So definitely reach out to us if you have any questions about that. And of course, last but not least, ability to meet registration application deadlines. As for the enrollment process, you can expect to get a mailing sometime in early September from us, and this will automatically be sent to you if you have a participant who is going into the 9th grade, meaning they'll be finishing it by next summer. And you'll just, in that packet, it's going to be a bit more information about the programs as well as more information about how to apply. All of the application materials are going to be due to us by October 15th, and the application materials are all online, so you can access them through your account. So first, you'll have to enroll for the Travel and Service Programs 2018, and then applicants will also have to get 2 references for us. And usually what we recommend is that it's somebody not from Beckett Chimney Corners or a family member. So a teacher or a coach, guidance counselor, any other adult that you're close to that can really give a good reference for you will work. Applicants will also have to fill out an application online, which is a series of short essay questions, really helping us understand why you want to go on this program. So as I mentioned, all those things are due to us by October 15th. And at that point, during the application period, you're really applying for either ISEP or TLS or YAS. In early December, you're going to find out if you were placed into one of those 3 programs. And if you're accepted into the ISEP program, you're really getting accepted into ISEP in general. And at that point, in early December, we'll send out another mailing to you, which will have a list of all the ISEP partnerships that we're offering for next summer. And you're going to rank your top 4 choices. And we will send an additional mailing towards the end of January, placing you in your specific program. We do get lots of questions from ISEP applicants just about whether or not they'll get into their first choice program. I'd say about 80% of our campers will get into their first or second choice. But it's really important to really be choosing countries that you're excited to go to out of those 4.
So as we've been mentioning, all of these programs are open to campers who have completed the 9th or 10th grades. And all of the prices for these programs are all inclusive. So if there is a flight needed to get to your destination, that's included in the tuition, as is if you need bottled water or all of the food on the programming or all of the transportation costs within the program itself. Again, that's included in the tuition of the program. So I just want to point out a few quick things with the dates and rates. For TLS and YAS, both of these programs are 28 days in length, and so they run in line with the in-camp sessions. So we can offer, for instance, TLS 1, which would be during the first session of camp, and TLS 2, which would be during the second session of camp. With ISEP, it's a little bit different because these programs are a little bit longer. They are typically 36 days in length, and they are staggered throughout the course of the summer, so they do not run in line with the in-camp sessions. As you're trying to decide which ISEP program you're interested in going on, or any of the programs, please make sure you're paying really close attention to the dates that are listed online. Those dates include an orientation and a debrief here at camp, and it's really important that participants be able to attend the full program, including that orientation and debrief. And so especially for ISEP families, if you go online right now, you'll see the dates for our 2017 programs. By December, we'll have the dates set for 2018, and so you'll definitely want to check that then. But we imagine that we'll be offering very similar programs and that it will fall in a very similar date range to what it is for this past summer. So you can look online just to get a rough idea of what it will be for 2018. And again, then we'll have that updated for you by December. I also just want to quickly point out that for the ISEP programs, they all have the same tuition regardless of your destination. So ISEP New Zealand is the same tuition as ISEP Chile, is the same as ISTEP Vietnam.
So we do offer financial aid for all of the travel and service programs, and if you're currently receiving financial aid for camp tuition, then you could expect to get a very similar percentage taken off from the tuition of a TSP program. So financial aid applications are due with your normal TSP application, which is on October 15th, and you apply the same way that you always have through TADS, which is our online system. If you're going to be new to the financial aid system, you can find a link to that on our website. And in terms of notifying families, we try to notify families earlier than we notify families of being accepted into the program. We like to give at least a week or two of once finding out how much aid you receive, of just being able to process it and talk to your son or daughter about the summer to make sure that it's affordable for you. We also really encourage families that if you do receive financial aid and maybe it's not enough or it's still going to be a struggle for you, to seek funding sources outside. We have had campers that were successful by going through their schools to get special summer scholarships or grants. There's also things like the Rotary Club. So definitely do some research there, and if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Great, so now we're going to take some time to focus on each of the different program options, and so we'll be starting with TLS, or Teen Leadership and Service. And so this program is unique in that it's one of our only programs with a key physical component to it. A little bit more than 1/3 of the trip will be spent bicycle touring, like you see in this photo. And so another third of the time, the group will be completing service projects along their route. And the final third of the trip will be spent doing various types of activities along their route. And so this map just gives you a really quick overview of the route that the group takes. They start out in Burlington, Vermont, and spend a few days here at the beginning of their trip completing different service projects. And then they bike up to Grand Isle and then take a ferry across into New York State. And then from there, it gets into hillier biking as they make their way through the high peaks region of the Adirondacks. And the group ends just outside of Saratoga Springs, New York. And so on the bike trip, when there are biking days, the average mileage is about 25 miles. And the longest days are just under 40 miles. And so we really encourage anyone who's interested in signing up for TLS to make sure that you're going on practice rides before the summer starts, just so that you're comfortable with your bike and using it on hills, and you're comfortable with shifting the gears and all that jazz. So as you can imagine, having the appropriate equipment is extremely important on TLS, and so you'll be sent a packing list as well as a bicycle guide that just talks about making sure that you're getting your bicycle tuned up and are prepared to take it on a 28-day touring trip. And then also just making sure that you have the appropriate clothes and layers to keep you nice and warm and dry throughout the program. It's also really important that you pay close attention to that packing list, because participants are responsible for carrying all their own equipment on their bicycle. As you can see in this picture, it gets stored in these bags called panniers. And panniers are the red bags that you see in this picture. And then items like sleeping pads and sleeping bags often just get attached to the top of the bicycle on top of your panniers. In addition to the gear that you have on your bicycle, there is a lot of group gear that camp supplies. So things like your tents and your cooking equipment and all the cooking utensils. And that all gets transported in a support van that is driven by a third leader that goes on the trip with the rest of the group. So don't worry, you don't have to worry about fitting a Coleman stove on the back of your bicycle. Also, for families that live overseas or that live outside of the Northeast, we do have a limited number of bicycles here at camp that we can rent out. And so if that's something that you're interested in, please just reach out to us and let us know that you would like to rent a bicycle. We do give renting priority, like I said, to families that live outside of the New England area. One of the highlights of the TLS program is that you get to camp out every single night on the trip. And I know this, I think in itself, is a type of cultural experience. At first, I know it's a little bit tricky to get comfortable in your sleeping bag and to spend a night sleeping in a group in a tent with your TLSers. But I also know that over the course of the trip, you will definitely get used to it. And I've spoken with a participant who actually at the end of her TLS trip, she missed sleeping in her tent and her sleeping bag so much that when she got home, she didn't sleep in her bed. She just laid out her sleeping bag on the floor in her room and slept in that. And so it really is, I think, a really great bonding experience and just a really wonderful way to spend your time getting to know the rest of your group and spend a lot of great time outside. So on TLS, there's a pretty good mix of both physical and social service projects. In terms of physical service, a lot of the projects are really focused on local agriculture and food systems. And so we partner with different organizations like the Keene Valley School that you see in this picture, and an organization called Intervale in Burlington, Vermont, where the group helps out with different gardens and different farming initiatives. In terms of social service, we partner with a few different day camps when we can along the group's route. And so in Burlington, we try to partner with the Boys and Girls Club. And then further along in the program, we partner with the Tupper Lake Day Camp. And at the end, we partner with another YMCA through the Glens Falls Y. And so, like I said, on this trip, you are spending a lot of the time biking, but not all of the time biking. The group gets to go whitewater rafting on the Hudson River for a day. And they also take some time to just have a little bit of downtime in some of the cute towns that you pass through along the trip. So you'll spend some time in Burlington and Lake Placid, just getting the chance to tour around, maybe buy some souvenirs, and definitely take the opportunity to get some Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And then, of course, when the group is in the High Peaks region of the Adirondacks, we actually have you do a service project with the Adirondack Park Service. And then the group also often has a free day where you can take the chance to do some hikes and really get into the High Peaks region. So the next program that we're going to be talking about is Yellowstone Adventure and Service. And on the YAS program, the group spends time in the Gallatin National Forest in Montana. They also spend some time in Yellowstone as well as the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. And so this picture just shows you a quick outline of the route that the groups take. So we can run anywhere from 1 to 4 YAS trips every summer, just depending on how many kids sign up for it. So some of our trips start out in Bozeman, Montana, which is up at the top of the screen. And over the course of the trip, they slowly make their way south through, like I said, the Gallatin National Forest and Yellowstone, completing different service projects. And they end in Jackson, Wyoming, way at the bottom of the screen. And then for other groups, they do the same thing, but in reverse. They'll fly into Jackson, Wyoming, and then slowly over the course of the trip, make their way north up to Bozeman as they complete service work. And so similar to TLS, on YAS, the group gets to camp out every single night. And I should point out that on both of these programs is what we call front country camping. And so the campsites, they are all accessible by road so that vehicles can get out to them. But it is good to know that a lot of these campsites, while accessible by roads, are still often in really remote locations. And as you can see from this photo, they're also often in just really stunningly beautiful places. On the YAS program, there's a misconception that the kids will go out and be backpacking. The group does go on day hikes, but they don't do any extended overnight backpacking trips. What they do, however, get to do is practice their cooking skills, because on both YAS and TLS, the group is responsible for working together to help prepare their meals for the group every single day. And so it's really helpful to bring recipes and your cooking skills from home and really showcase them with your group mates on the trip. So because there's such wide open spaces out west, we either work with minibuses or Ford Transits and minivans to shuttle the group and all of their gear from their campground at night to their service projects during the day and back and forth. And so it's the trip leaders who are driving those vehicles and getting the group from one location to the next. And I just like to point this out because there are such wide open spaces between locations, so the group does get to spend a bit of time in these vehicles. And a lot of participants really like the vehicle time just because it's a nice opportunity to just kind of sit back and relax and bond as a group and just admire some of the amazing views that you get to have out west. So on the YAS program, almost all of the service work is physical service projects. And so like I said, the group really, they partner with national parks and rangers and other types of volunteers, and they really do a wide range of work. They get to complete different trail maintenance projects. They work on invasive species removal. They get the chance to harvest produce for community pantries and local food systems like you see in this picture. And I think one of the strongest aspects of this program are our service partnerships. We've been partnering with some of the same organizations for many, many years. And our service partners are really some of the most incredible people I've ever met. They're so excited to get to know our groups every summer and really just love getting the chance to talk to participants, to learn more about their lives, and to share all the work that they're doing with their own. It's really great. So of course, while you're out west, we definitely have the group spend some time in Yellowstone, camping out and exploring. And then we also work with a professional guide company called Yellowstone Association. They've actually recently changed their name to Yellowstone Forever. And so they spend 2 days with these professional guides in Yellowstone. On the first day, they get to learn about the geothermal activity in the park. And on the second day, the group wakes up really, really early in the morning and they head out to a region in Yellowstone called the Lamar Valley. And they set up spotting scopes and take out binoculars like you see in this photo. And the group gets the chance to just look for some of the amazing wildlife that they have out in Yellowstone. In addition to that, there are 2 adventure activity days where the group works with outside contractors. So the first is with a company called Exum, which is a rock climbing company. And while they're outside of Jackson, Wyoming, the group spends the day working with this company where they get to climb up 3 different pitches or rock faces. And even if you've never done any rock climbing before, that's completely fine. The guides really help walk you through the basics of rock climbing, and you get to support one another as you climb up those pitches, and then at the end you get to rappel down from those rock faces. And the second adventure activity day is a day of whitewater rafting on the Gallatin River with an organization called the Montana Whitewater Company.
All right, so now we're going to transition and start talking about ISEP, which is our International Camper Exchange Program. So we've been running ISEP programs since 1966, and we currently have 9 active partnerships. So these are the programs that you can expect to see if you're accepted into the program in December to be some of your choices to go on for next summer. And we're going to get into some of the specific highlights of each of these programs, but first we're just going to go over some of the logistics and explain how ISEP is different from our domestic programs. So for all of our international programs, we are partnered with YMCA Host. And this is really what makes these programs different from just a standard tourist experience. So our hosts will really facilitate the program and are responsible for designing the itinerary, and they really help us get access to some very meaningful and authentic cultural experiences, as well as some really meaningful service projects. So they're the ones who reach out to their local contacts in the community to find out what the community needs, and we're really just joining in with their efforts to do the things that they're already doing through their YMCA. So structurally, the ISEP programs do differ a bit from our domestic programs. So first, they're a bit longer. They're 36 days long. Most programs will be about 30 days in country. And then in terms of housing, there is not a lot of camping on these programs. Some of the programs do have some camping experiences, which we'll point out. But for the most part, you're going to be staying in YMCA facilities. So you could be in dorm-style housing if it's more of an urban YMCA, or you could also be placed into a cabin if you're staying at a camp. And then for transportation, the majority of the transportation is done in like private buses. So our hosts are the one that organize that for us. And so they'll hire a private bus to get from location to location. But it's also possible that participants could be taking public transportation as a group throughout the experience as well. And then, as I mentioned, the itineraries are really designed by our program partners, but we do try to break up the itineraries so there's a really good mix of service projects, cultural experiences, and then a few days that are sprinkled in just for downtime, where participants will have a lot more say in the experiences that they're having on the program. All of our ISEP programs have some form of homestay on them, and these can range from about 3 nights up to 12 nights long. And we really feel that this is one of the most unique parts of our program, and really the best way for participants to connect and learn about the culture of the country that they're visiting. And structurally, the way that they work is our participants will typically stay at nighttime with the family, so they'll have dinner and do activities together at night, and then during the daytime they'll actually meet back up with their group to continue the program. We always try to have a couple days, usually a weekend, where participants just get to be with their homestay families for a full 2 days, and that's so that the families can really take them to do some fun activities in the area that they are. We always have questions from parents just about how the families are selected. And so the families that participants are placed with are YMCA families that are known by the host YMCA. It'd be very similar that if we were to host a group of participants here at camp, we would likely reach out to all of you as potential host families. During the homestay, we do have some communication policies in place, so our trip leaders do carry cell phones with them, and our participants are instructed on how to connect with leaders if there is some kind of problem in the homestay. And they always do night one check-ins, just because that's kind of where most participants have the most nerves, is going into their homestays. And so the leaders will call just to check in to make sure everything is going okay. I would say that the homestay experience is something that participants are typically the most nervous about for the program, but it's definitely always ends up being one of the highlights of their experience, just because it's such a unique experience and the homestay families are extremely welcoming. So definitely something to be excited about and embrace on our programs. I do want to make a point that we have two programs that currently don't have like the traditional homestay experience. Vietnam is one of those, and that's due to government regulations. They don't allow tourists to be staying overnight in the homes of families in this kind of setting. And so instead they'll do day visits with families. And then on ISTEP Australia, participants also don't stay overnight with families, but they'll do school visits during the day with Australian teenagers. All right, so now we're going to transition and talk a little bit about some of the highlights of each of the programs that we're going to be offering next summer. And the first one we're going to start with is ISTEP Japan. So we are partnered with the Tochigi YMCA, which is in a city called Utsunomiya, which is about an hour and a half outside of Tokyo. And some of the highlights of this program is there's a lot of social service that our participants get to participate in. The YMCA is actually connected to a kindergarten, and so our kids will spend a lot of time going in and visiting with classrooms and getting to play games with small children. They'll also do a few excursions outside of Utsunomiya, one to Nikko to visit some really beautiful temples. They also will do an excursion into Tokyo where they'll stay 1 to 2 nights there and get to explore different parts of the city. And one of the definite highlights of Japan is that Japanese culture is so different from American culture, and our hosts do an excellent job of really introducing our participants to a lot of different cultural experiences that are very hands-on. So in one of these pictures you can see they're experiencing a tea ceremony. Our hosts are also really great about giving our group a budget for a lot of their meals, and our groups actually have a lot of say in getting to go out and try different restaurants in Utsunomiya.
Great. So on ISTEP China, the group will travel to 3 different cities within the country, and those cities are selected by our host partner, Lu Wang. And so in 2017, for instance, the group is traveling to Beijing, Xi'an, and Guangzhou. And so this is, I think, one of the strengths of the program is that the group really gets to see different parts of the country and just also compare and contrast how these cities in some ways feel very similar, but in other ways just feel very different. Also, one of the nice pieces about that as well is that food is very regional in China, and so by getting to travel to different places within the country, you can kind of see how the cuisine varies from one location to the next. One thing that I do want to point out with ISTEP China is that a lot of food is cooked using peanut oil, and so if you do have a peanut allergy, this probably is not the best program for you to sign up for. But one of the strengths of this program is that you get to spend a lot of time working with Chinese teens and volunteers, because within each of those 3 cities that you visit, each time you get to a new city, there will be a whole new group of Chinese teens that will work with your group the whole time you're in that location. And so it's really nice because you get to make these really close connections with these teenagers. And you get to take part in all different sorts of activities together, whether that's cultural activities like making jiaozi or dumplings like you see in this picture, or learning kung fu like you see in the bottom picture. The group also will do service projects together with the Chinese teens and volunteers. And so on ISTEP China, it's important to know that all of this service work is social service. And that's just because a lot of people in China are very curious about Americans, and so you could be doing anything from helping to teach really simple like games or songs in English to young children who might not speak any English, all the way through to working with elderly people who, again, might not speak any English. And so it's good to know that in China, it's very common for our group to be asked to put on performances for people. And so we recommend coming with just different songs or dances, and just be ready to share of yourself, because you really do get a lot of time to meet some really amazing people throughout the course of this trip.
So for ISTEP Vietnam, our main partner is located in Ho Chi Minh City, and this program does a lot of traveling. So they actually start in Ho Chi Minh City and slowly throughout the program make their way all the way north to Hanoi, which is the city they'll fly back home from. So starting in Ho Chi Minh City, the group will spend about a week there doing some tourist activities and just really getting to know our partners. And then they head down south to the Mekong River and Mekong River Delta, and they are this is a great experience for them because they get to see a much more rural side of Vietnam, especially having come from Ho Chi Minh City. And so they'll do some activities there, including going to visit a floating market. And then they'll start to head inland to the city of Dalat, which is in a much more mountainous area in southern Vietnam. And here they'll start their first service project, which will last for about a week. And they're going to be going into a primary school. And so for half of the day, the group will be doing some work on the school, and our partners usually really put our kids to work doing some pretty intense construction projects. So in the past, they've helped to build a patio, helped to build gardens, and painted a mural, as you can see in this photo, which has been very fun for our groups. And then in the afternoon, you will head into the classrooms and get to work with kids. And so you'll do some fun games to kind of teach some English words to the kids. But a big focus of it is really just on games and connecting with the kids. From there, you'll start to head north. You'll go out to the coast and get to visit some of the beaches in the Nha Trang area. And then you'll take an overnight train all the way north into Hanoi, where the group will spend some time exploring the city and also get to do an excursion out to Ha Long Bay, which is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Great. On ISTEP Australia, we partner with a camp called Camp Yarramundi, which is part of the Greater Sydney YMCA, and it's located about 1 hour away from Sydney in a really beautiful area along a river. And so Camp Yarramundi really becomes the group's home base throughout the duration of the program. You'll spend most of your time at the camp. And it's nice because while you're there, the group gets to take part in a winter camp with some Australian youth who they come over to the camp, and you'll either help run part of the camp with those kids, or you'll get to take part in the camp itself as campers with those kids. And you'll also get to complete different service projects. We always like to make sure that the group completes some type of project at Camp Yarramundi itself, just to give back to that organization. But the group also goes out on day trips to complete service projects in some of the surrounding towns as well. You'll also take a few days to go out to visit Sydney and tour that metropolitan area. And you'll head out to the Blue Mountains to do a day of hiking and sightseeing out there. One of the highlights for groups also is taking a day and heading to the beach and learning how to surf for the day. And groups in the past have then traveled by train out to a tiny town called Broken Hill, which is out in the outback. And while there, the group has completed more service projects where they've worked with elementary schools and a nursing home. And later on in the trip, when the group returns to Camp Yarramundi, the kids always get the chance to visit a nearby high school and spend a few days shadowing teenagers throughout the day, so that you can see what a day in Australian high school is like.
For ISEP New Zealand, our main host is the Shakespeare Lodge, which is part of the Auckland YMCA, and they're located about 40 minutes outside of Auckland. And it's in a very beautiful location that's on wildlife preservation, so our kids will get to spend a lot of time there since it's their home base, just exploring that general area. So this program takes place entirely on the North Island, and the group will get to see a lot of different beautiful sights, though, just exploring the different coastal regions and inland regions of the North Island. One of the highlights of this program is that Shakespeare Lodge is very similar in operation to the Berkshire Outdoor Center here at Beckett Chimney Corners. So they host a lot of school groups and company retreats and things like that. While our group is there, they're going to be hosting a holiday camp for younger kids, and our groups will get to take part in facilitating activities for them. So definitely come prepared with some fun camp activities, games, camp songs to teach to the kids from New Zealand. Outside of that, the majority of the service work is much more physical in nature. And it's very environmental based. So some of the things you might be doing is tree planting or trail maintenance, removing invasive species and things like that. And through that work, you're really going to learn a lot about New Zealand's environment, which is a big highlight of this program. Another highlight of the program is getting to do a road trip around the North Island. So about midway through your program, the group is going to pack into a van with your ISEP leaders and also your New Zealand leaders, and you're going to travel around to different places, including Cathedral Cove, which is down in the lower right-hand side of this slide. You'll also get to go rafting on this program, do some sea kayaking, and get to visit a marae, which is basically like a cultural center for the Indigenous people of New Zealand. So you'll get to learn all about that while you're there as well.
On ISTEP Uruguay, we partner with the Montevideo YMCA, and Montevideo is the capital city of Uruguay. And on this trip, there's a really nice balance where the group spends the first half of their trip out at a rural camp called Camp Artigas. And while the group is there, they get to complete a number of different service projects at some of the really beautiful rural schools that are out in that area. So the group gets to do a lot of painting, painting classrooms and painting playgrounds, as well as running different activities and games for the cute kids at those schools. You also get to take part in a winter camp where teenagers from Montevideo will come out for a few days, and you spend about 5 days or so taking part in a winter camp with those teenagers. You also get to spend some time with teens that are part of a leadership program from a nearby town called Nueva Helvetia, where they'll go on some day trip excursions with you to places like Colonia, and they'll also complete service work with you. And then before you leave Camp Artigas, you get the chance to go on your first homestay experience with those teens in Nueva Helvetia. And so one of the unique things about ISTEP Uruguay is that on this program you get to have 2 homestays. So after that first one, the first one's a bit shorter. It's usually 2 to 3 nights. Then when your group leaves Camp Artigas, you'll return to Montevideo. And when you get into Montevideo, that's when your second homestay starts. And that one tends to be quite a bit longer, about 11 nights in length. But most participants are really excited about that experience. One, because you've already had the chance to sample what homestay experiences are like, but also because the teens that go out to winter camp at Camp Artigas with you are your homestay siblings. So you get a chance to get to know them really well before the homestay experience even starts. And so while the group is in Montevideo, then you get to just see what urban life in Uruguay is like. So the group gets to visit a number of different youth centers and continue to do different day trips out of Montevideo just to see different important historical sites and towns throughout the country. One of the things on this trip is that the group does spend a lot of time speaking Spanish, and so if you're interested in improving your Spanish, I highly recommend signing up for this trip. Or if you're just interested in trying to pick it up, this is a great trip to try out your foreign language skills. Also, there's a lot of really great food on this trip, but I just want to point out that a lot of people in Uruguay don't really understand the idea of being a vegetarian. A lot of traditional Uruguayan dishes really do center around meat. And so we've had vegetarians go on this trip and say that they were well fed. But we just like to point out that having steak and other types of meat products are pretty common in a lot of traditional dishes.
For ISTEP Sweden, our main partner is actually with a camp that's called Camp Breivik, and they're part of the Greater Stockholm YMCA. And so the group starts their program in Stockholm, and they'll spend about a week there doing some sightseeing within the city and also visiting some smaller YMCA locations to do service work, typically with younger kids, again, like very similar to running day camp activities and really getting to tour their facilities. From there, the group goes into their homestays for a long weekend between 4 and 5 days, and then they actually travel with their homestay siblings out to Camp Breivik. And one of the things that makes this program very unique is that our campers get to be fully integrated into a full 3-week session of camp at Camp Breivik. And so our kids get integrated into camp cabins where they'll be partnered up with Swedish participants and also Swedish counselors, and really do a lot of like fun camp activities that are probably going to be familiar to you from Beckett Chimney Corners, but are definitely a new cultural experience. Another highlight of this program is while you're at Camp Breivik, you're going to set out with your ISEP group as well as some of the international or the Swedish campers there, and you're going to go on a canoe trip, which they call hike there. And so the Camp Breivik is actually located right on the Swedish archipelago, so it's a really beautiful location. And our groups will head out in their canoes from the camp and go and camp on islands throughout the way. And this is a big part of the leadership program at that YMCA. And so our kids actually get a lot to get to take part in planning out the routes that they're going to go on and deciding on campsites and so forth. And you'll definitely get to experience white nights because in Sweden during the summertime, the sun really does not go down till about 2 in the morning, and then it quickly comes up again at about 4 a.m. So a lot of our groups will actually end up going out canoeing in the middle of the night and doing some rest time during the daytime. Once you return back to Breivik and the Swedish campers that you've been interacting with go home, your group is actually going to stay on site for about an additional week, and you're going to welcome in a new group of kids who you'll be working with much more closely in more of a leadership role. And so they call this Adventure Camp, and this is a group of Swedish kids who have dyslexia and are trying to teach or trying to learn English. And so a big part of our campers' role is just to be interacting with them, playing games, and making it a comfortable place to be able to try to speak English. So that's definitely been a highlight of the program as well.
On ISTEP Chile, we partner with the Valparaiso YMCA, and Valparaiso is a coastal city about 1 hour away from Santiago, and the city itself is incredibly beautiful. It's built up around on a hillside or hillsides that lead down to the water. And so when the group first gets out to Valparaiso, they spend quite a bit of time going on walking tours of the city because there's just a lot of really beautiful places to get to explore. And all the homes are painted different colors, and there's a lot of really beautiful street art throughout the city as well. And so the group gets to tour around and just see some of those beautiful places. Also on this program, one of the highlights is the homestay. The homestay lasts anywhere from 9 to 12 nights, and it's one of our longer homestay experiences. And as Alyssa had mentioned before, the group gets to spend the night with their host family, and then during the day they meet up to complete different service projects together and go on different day trips. And so on this program there is a really nice balance between physical and social service. Some of the physical service projects that the group works on is through the YMCA. They help fund a school called the George Williams School, And so every year, our ISEP Chile group gets to go out to the school while the kids are away on winter break, and they help to repaint the classrooms and paint a mural. And they do this every year to help try to encourage the kids to come back to school after winter break. The kids are all really excited and curious to see how their classrooms have changed while the ISEP groups were there helping to paint them. And so it's nice because the group gets to spend quite a bit of time at the George Williams School. You go back after painting it once the kids are back in their school session, so you get a chance to meet them and play some games with them for a little bit. The group also completes a housing project that's sort of similar to Habitat for Humanity. They go out to one of the suburbs of Valparaiso, higher up on the hillside, and work again with initiatives that are sponsored through the YMCA just to help out with some housing projects out there. In addition to that, the Valparaiso Y has a really strong teen leadership program, and so throughout the group's time in Valparaiso, they get to meet up with those teenagers and complete different service projects together, like helping out with a local soup kitchen. And then those teens also go with our ISEP participants on a little retreat out to La Campana National Park, which is in the foothills of the Andes, and they get to spend some time together in cabins very similar to camp, where they get to just explore the region and sing songs and do different activities all together out there.
And the last program we're going to talk about is ISTEP Peru. So for Peru, we're partnered with the Lima YMCA, which is in the capital city. And this is a very large YMCA in South America. And our groups will use this as their home base throughout the program, but have a lot of excursions outside of that. Just within the YMCA, it's a very large facility, a large community center. So they have a couple schools inside. They have a full-size pool, a restaurant, and a lot of classrooms. And so our kids definitely get to take advantage of all the fun activities that are going on there throughout their time. So they'll get to take part in like salsa dancing lessons, also take part in some cooking classes and Peruvian box drumming. So there's a lot of fun cultural activities to do there. In terms of excursions, they'll definitely head outside the YMCA and outside of just Lima to do some service projects. So they'll go visit one of the YMCA camps in Aspitia, where it's winter in Peru at the time, so the camp is not active, but the kids from our ISEP group will go in and do some projects similar to the way that we host a work weekend here, really to prep the camp for the upcoming summer. So you might be working on the lawns. I know our kids have laid grass in the past. You might be doing some lesser construction projects and things like that. They also go to a suburb of Lima called Independencia, where the YMCA has some Y-funded projects that they've been working on for quite some time. This is also kind of similar to Habitat for Humanity projects, and the projects do vary year to year based on where the project is. But in the past, they've helped to build walls for homes. They've helped to pour cement for the foundation of a school, helped to work on roads. And so it's pretty heavy construction work. Definitely bring some clothes that you don't mind getting dirty. But it's been really fun for our participants to take part in that. They usually get to work side by side with local people who are there as well and get to play some soccer with kids after the project is done. The group will also get to do an excursion to Cusco, so they'll take a flight from Lima into Cusco and spend about a week there exploring the Sacred Valley and doing a tour in Cusco, and also get to go up to Machu Picchu, which is definitely a highlight of the program. All right, so that is all we have for you. Thanks for joining in on this presentation. Just wanted to remind everybody that you can expect to get a packet from us about these programs in early September. So if you don't receive that for some reason, definitely reach out to us. We're also just really happy to talk about the programs. So if you do have any questions, definitely feel free to peruse our website. We have a lot more information on there, but also feel free to reach out to us as well, as we love talking about the trips. And we look forward to seeing your application.
Thank you.
Thank you.